Good evening, Minister Caddle.
Good evening. Happy to be here.
Well, let's start here. A Computer Misuse Act already existed that was passed in 2005. So why was there a need to bring this new cybercrime bill at this time?
Well, as you know, and as you've just said, the Computer Misuse Act is almost 20 years old, and technology sector is perhaps the fastest moving sector in the world. Things change every day. And so there are several reviews that suggested that act had to be updated to include things that it did not include that were troubling us today. So, for example, the techniques that people use to hack computers and to try and intercept data that is people's personal data. Things like the exploitation of children and sexual violence online, issues of cyber terrorism, things like committing preparatory acts for cybercrime. So these aren't things that were included. But also the fact is that in order to address cybercrime, because there are no borders or boundaries when it comes to these kinds of crimes, something may happen in the US or the UK that affects me here. It may happen in Eastern Europe that affects somebody in Jamaica. And so we also had to make sure that we had international cooperation with other jurisdictions so that if these crimes occur in other places, which they usually do, that we would be able to collaborate with the officials there to be able to prosecute. But I want to get, apart from the technology issues, to the issues that affect people in Barbados and why this legislation needed to be updated, needed to be brought forward now. All of Barbados knows about the mental health issues that not just our young people, but all Barbadians are subject to. What we found, and I'm sure many people have themselves experienced this, is that a lot of the mental stress that was causing people to even take the ultimate measure of not wanting to remain with us and not wanting to experience this anymore, much of that stress is caused by cyberbullying. People who are victims of harassment online, who have personal images and intimate images leaked that affect their ability to earn an income, to get a job, to go to school. And this was really continues to cause stress for people. And it is not the kind of damage that you get one time from breaking and entering, or even from just a broken arm, for an example. Is the kind of damage that can follow you for the rest of your life. The other thing that we notice and have to contend with is that even some of the violent crime that we see taking place started on social media, what people call IG wars. And one person has a problem with something that somebody says online or says about their family, and they escalate it into a physical crime. All of these things have to be addressed. And that was one of the reasons that we needed to update that act to bring it into this century and into this time that we're in.
Okay, we've heard there is concern that this bill will stop freedom of speech. How do you respond to that?
I respond to that in a couple ways. One of those is that this bill absolutely does not stop people from freedom of expression that is protected under the Constitution, to the extent that it does not injure someone's reputation. That is also protected under the Constitution. And if people check Section 20 of the Constitution, you'll realize that the freedom of expression enshrined there also makes reference to the fact that that freedom of expression does not take place or is not given safe harbor in cases where that expression is causing harm to another person. So all justice, the core of justice, is the balance of a person's freedom with the extent to which it causes harm to another. Now, people will say that we would normally have this in the civil domain. And this cybercrime bill makes these things criminal offenses. And I really think that we have to understand why we have chosen to do that. Many Barbadians, most Barbadians, I dare say, that are affected by these matters do not have the wherewithal to engage a lawyer and to bring civil action against the offending person. I do not believe that it is fair that a person has to be rich to be able to make sure they're protected from harassment online. Now, the burden for all of these things, as in most of law, is the test of truth. If you say something that is objectively verifiable, that is proven, if you have a perspective on something that you can prove, that is protected. If you have a personal feeling about how someone looks or how they speak, that is protected. But to the extent that that speech is used to harass, to intimidate, to cause distress to another person, it cannot be protected, and it never has been under the Constitution. I think that perhaps the test that we should apply is, what are the kinds of things that we want to be able to say about another person that we judge that this legislation stops us from saying? That is really the point of reflection, because if it is something that you know is likely to cause damage or harm or intimidate a person, then perhaps you should refrain from saying it. Let's be clear that these kinds of damages can be lasting for people's ability to earn. If I'm a plumber and somebody says that I've done something criminal or otherwise that I have not done, that affects the extent to which people will call me to continue to invite me into their homes to ply my trade. It's going to affect the amount of money I can earn and the extent to which I can care for my family. These are material issues. And I do believe that I want to assure Barbadians that this legislation does not affect your right to freely express your thoughts and ideas, but it does protect the population from the harm that malicious communication that you engage in, that you cannot prove, that is pornographic or that seeks to embarrass another. It does protect the population from those kinds of acts.
Okay, thank you, Minister Caddle, so much. We have to leave it there. Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, Marsha Caddle, speaking on the new cybercrime legislation.